When lockdown hit, I had no choice but to move into a small apartment. It was cheap, a little rundown, but I didn't mind. The entire building felt deserted, except for the occasional sounds coming from the unit next door. At first it was nothing, just faint shuffling like someone pacing. But every night around 3 a.m. I heard tapping on the wall, always the same rhythm. One night I knocked back. The moment I did, a voice whispered, "Please, help me." I froze, my skin crawled. The next day I asked the landlord about the apartment. His response made my blood run cold. That place? Nobody's lived there in months. I wasn't about to ignore it. I called the police. When they broke in, they found her, an elderly woman, frail and barely breathing. Her caregiver had abandoned her at the start of lockdown, locking the door behind them. She had been surviving on rainwater and whatever scraps she could find. During lockdown, I worked as a food delivery driver. The money wasn't great, but I needed it. One night, I got an order with a weird request. No contact, just leave the food at the door. Not unusual, but when I arrived, the house looked abandoned. Boarded up windows, overgrown yard. The air smelled wrong. Still, I placed the bag down and took a picture for proof. Just as I turned to leave, my phone buzzed. "Please don't leave yet." I stared at the message. The order hadn't been prepaid. Who was texting me? Something told me to run. As I backed away, I saw him. A man emerged from the shadows beside the house, holding a knife. He wasn't a customer. He was waiting for me to get closer. I bolted to my car, locked the doors, and sped off. Later, I found out the real homeowner had been dead for weeks. Someone had been living in the house using food deliveries to lure people in. That night, I stopped taking deliveries. Lockdown was lonely, so when I found a guy looking for a room, I thought, why not? His name was Robert. Quiet, polite, paid rent on time. A perfect roommate. At first. Then little things started happening. My phone went missing, only to show up in the fridge. The TV turned on by itself at 3 a.m. One night, I woke up to my bedroom door open. I always locked it. That's when I set up my phone to record the hallway. The next morning, I watched the footage. Robert was standing outside my door. For 3 hours, he barely moved, just stared. Sometimes he whispered something under his breath. I packed my bags and left that night. Later, I found out he wasn't just a bad roommate. He was a serial squatter, someone who moved in under fake names and refused to leave. The last person who tried to kick him out, they went missing.